So welcome everybody. My name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the area. I'll explain a little bit more about that. But I'm very lucky and honored to be here with a bunch of gentlemen who have done some amazing work in this space. And what we're going to do today is find out a lot more about what they've done, how they've done it, and the challenges they've overcome. The thing I like to do with these kind of panel sessions is to give you an opportunity to ask questions, because I think the devil's definitely in the details. So whilst I have a kind of set of questions, we're going to open it up as much as we can to the audience to ask all of them or the individuals themselves. So let's get started. I've asked everybody, and you have a minute, so I'm timing them, just to introduce themselves so you can get a good view of these different people. So.
Good morning. My name's Rodney James. I'm with Duke Energy. I've been with Duke Energy for about 12 years. Duke Energy is the largest electric utility in North America. I work in a group called the Emerging Technologies Office, so we look at technology 5, 10, 15 years in the future. We evaluate that technology, and then we look at it on how it will affect our business, whether that be the internal business, operations or something like that, or to our customers and how it will affect our customers. And then we offer learnings as like a SME to those folks. And so I'm glad to be here to be talking about this AR and VR.
Thanks so much, Rodney. Ed?
So my name is Ed Moore. I work for Chevron out of Houston. I work in the energy technology company. We're responsible basically for all R&D and functional awareness across Chevron. I'm in the technical computing organization, and I lead the industrial Internet of Things R&D portfolio. That portfolio is responsible also for augmented and virtual reality development. So similar to Duke, we have a group that's responsible for looking at these technologies and trying to bring them into our organization at a fairly rapid pace. And background, I'm an electrical engineer from Texas A&M. Do we have any other Aggies here? Hopefully, no? Oh. So, and then I had my own software company for about 5 years, and worked at a company called Aspen Tech for about 10 years, and Chevron for 11.
Fantastic. Lorne?
Lorne Poindexter. I'm with Ameren. I'm the Senior Manager of Innovation for the fossil and the nuclear plant, and that's kind of a recent transition for me. I've got 28 years of experience at Callaway Nuclear Plant. Done a little bit of everything out there, including the licensed operator, maintenance manager over instrument and control for 5 years. The last 3 years I've been working with the corporate innovation team, and similar to Rodney, working on a roadmap. And when I got there, the roadmap was pretty much built, so I said, can I start implementing some pilots? And that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years.
Thank you. And then we've got Nick, who's just come from the Antarctic, especially to be with us.
I'm Nick Saunders. I'm with American Electric Power and our Transmission Station Design Standards group. I'm assisting with the development of AEP's implementation of BIM that we call Integrated Design and Construction. And I also assist with our prefabrication of station assemblies.
Thank you. Vincent?
All right, Vincent Williams. First of all, I'd like to just thank the Brain Exchange and everyone for allowing us all to be here. It's been a great opportunity to get to know some of these individuals here, very, very great minds. And Mark, also thank you for moderating. But I work for Southern Nuclear Company's Innovation and Technology Department, implementing new technology that is out right now for digitizing our maintenance workers, operations, and also our engineering departments. Really, really cool job. Get a chance to go out and do a lot of research engineering, finding new technology, and then finding ways to bring it in and deploy and implement it within Southern Nuclear's fleet across each one of our plant sites. So looking forward to kind of chit-chatting about that today, and happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. So my name is Mark Sage, as I said. I lead an organization called the AREA, which stands for Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. It's a global membership-funded nonprofit alliance, and we're purely focused on helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. So a lot of the companies you'll see out there are AREA members, also companies like Boeing, Bosch, Newport News Shipbuilding, Medtronic, a whole bunch of different industries and different companies. And it's really about helping companies deliver the thought leadership. It's about focusing on some of the barriers to adoption, which I'm going to be asking these gentlemen about. And then also developing research that's very useful for companies trying to deploy AR. So that's a little bit about the area. So the one thing, I've been lucky enough to speak to all these gentlemen individually, and it's interesting that a lot of you are coming from the innovation kind of team, and that's a theme I see quite a lot from the AR and VR space, is the innovation kind of teams are starting, obviously, to look at this as a new technology. So one of the things I'm really interested in is how you go from that innovation into full deployment. And again, it's some questions we'll be asking later. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about AR and VR. So I'm going to ask these gentlemen to talk about some of the amazing things that they've actually achieved. So I'm going to start, if okay, with Lorne in the middle there, talk about your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just throw it out there. AR and VR probably won't solve every problem you have. But the best place to start is a specific problem you want to address. My project, we had, it's a lockout, tagout training module. The problem we had was throughput, the time it took, and the retention rate of the knowledge. So we were still having a lot of errors in the plant. We had averaging about 4 hours to go through the training course. It had a CBT, computer-based training module. It had a classroom session and a hands-on in the lab. So when I presented this to Tsunami XR as this is a problem I need to solve, I said I need a module to combine the CBT, the lesson plan, and the lab activity into one VR module, and I want it to be delivered in less than an hour. So just before the refuel this spring, we implemented that training module. We gave that training to about a third of our contractors coming in. So out of about 900, we normally have 900 contractors come through this basic safety verification training module for their lockout, tagout protection. We gave that to all the returnees, and we had some very good results from that. We had 6 individuals in the virtual space at the same time going through the training, led by the instructor. We got all positive feedback from the students. They loved it, and they were engaged, so the instructor really liked that. Typically, these guys are getting paid to stand in line while they're waiting for the course, so it solved one of our biggest choke points in our training in processing. So it's been very successful for us.
And just a quick question in terms of having a lot of people going through this training. Are you happy from a culture perspective, suddenly putting something on their head? Can you just comment a little bit about how these people felt when they're going through the training?
Yeah, so we had no people feeling ill from the headset to address that. They liked it because it was fun. And obviously, if they're engaged, and from our results, we know that they gained the knowledge and they retained it. So we had a lot of positive feedback. The instructor would let them tear the room apart in the last 5 minutes, and they just loved that. Put a pipe up on the wall or a valve on the ceiling or something.
That's cool. Thanks, Lorne. Okay, let's try some of the other gentlemen. Ed, perhaps you want to talk about some of your use cases at Chevron.
Sure. Yeah, so we actually started with AR probably, and we're focusing more on augmented reality with Google Glass back in 2014. We did some pilots for that in the field. When Google shut that down, we kind of shut that project down. The next technology we looked at was the Microsoft HoloLens. When that was announced in 15, we started getting some devices in 16. What we thought about is how do we get this out into the field? Because we look at these technologies as platforms. We want to be able to build on them. As they improve, we get better and better capabilities. So what we did there is we focused on the remote expert or the remote assist capability, which along with that is also remote inspection is another capability you can run off that same software. So this is early days. This is 16, 17. We did initial pilots with the free Skype app that was on the HoloLens. It's a consumer app. It would never work for us. We beat on Microsoft to put that into what we then was Skype for Business, but ultimately got delivered as Teams. And that now is, we put that into production in October of last year. We have a lot of HoloLenses out there. So we came up with the idea of any expert anywhere in the world in under a minute. So the business case for this is very simple. If we can say one international trip, that basically bought 2, 3 of those devices immediately. The other things we did from a production perspective is we figured out ways to leverage existing frameworks and platforms that IT had. So Teams is an example of that. Chevron was early in Teams rollout, so it slowed us down a little bit. Now we have probably around 15,000 of our employees on Teams, and that'll get globally pushed here coming shortly. So what this allows is anybody with a HoloLens is able to basically put it on, and they get the full company directory. They can type in their person's name or email, it'll search and find anybody in Chevron. So we didn't have to put any additional IT infrastructure in. So that was huge. Also around device management, we leveraged AirWatch at the time. Again, working closely with the vendor to support the device so we can now manage all those devices. So if one gets lost or stolen, we can wipe it remotely, just like we would do a phone. So we got early commitment from IT, which I would strongly advise you to do. Get their buy-in, get their participation. It was a great technology for them because they kind of showed how they were being innovative versus kind of typically being lagging and kind of impeding us. But they did a great job with getting the devices fully supported. So now those devices are supported. We have those in pretty much every business unit globally. And from there, now we're able to build on top of that. So the use cases we've now had in pilot for about 6 months are what we call full-scale model review, where we can take any engineering model, bring that to scale, do walkarounds, understand if there are any conflicts or clashes. And then also we can take that to site and find issues with it actually being built where it's supposed to be built. So that's a super powerful capability. We've had some business units, immediate return of investment on those. Simple examples is they had a support beam sitting on top of a drain in the facility. The drain's never modeled. Some of our facilities are over 100 years old. And so having that capability to go in these brownfield and see what these new pieces of equipment would look like would work really well. And then the other main use case is remote assist, where, not remote assist, augmented work instructions, where we're able to walk people through specific processes. Some of the processes might be very complex or done rarely, and we just kind of consider just-in-time training. So those last two are ones we will put into production later this year or early next year. And then there's a lot of things we're working on going beyond that to really fully digitize the field engineers and allowing them to really have all the digital data that we have in our control rooms at their hands in the field.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to ask you a nasty question to start with.
Sure.
And I don't mean this in the wrong way, but it sounds like you're a veteran of this. You've been doing it for quite a few years. Kind of one thing that you'd see has changed back from that, 16, 15 to now. Could you kind of talk about maybe the one thing that you've seen is improved or changed since then?
Yeah, the key thing is the platforms have matured, right? The hardware is the same hardware we had back in 16. We're expecting to get the new hardware here shortly. But the platforms, the ability to do device management, that didn't exist. We had to go beat on AirWatch to get them to support that, and they did. And then the same with Microsoft is it took them forever to get that app out on Teams. And then that app that came out initially was more, it's kind of a minimal viable product. It worked and solved the initial capabilities, but now some of the capabilities it has, I can do group calls with multiple people, up to 150, or I think 100 people now. It's just limited because it leverages that Teams infrastructure. I have all that capability available to me.
Cool. Okay, well, perhaps we'll pick up on that when we talk about some of the challenges of deployment. Vincent, can I go over to the other side of the room and ask yourself?
Similar, I guess on a different vein to Ed, our wireless infrastructure was one of the biggest catalysts for us in wanting to learn how to leverage AR and VR and different types of technologies. And so one of the biggest challenges that I was presented with when I first started in this group in 2016 was to find ways to leverage that new expanded wireless backbone. We were installing expanded infrastructure at each of our sites, and at the nuclear power plants around containment, heavily concreted areas and areas where there was absolutely no service whatsoever, no wireless network to speak of. That was the challenge. How are we going to leverage the backbone? And one of the things that I found as a solution was a wireless device, a wireless headset that could be used without having the worker's hands be of use, and being able to leverage the safety aspect of it too. So in nuclear, you want to make sure safety first, but at the same time, how can your worker's hands be used, especially in radiologically controlled areas where if you touch something, you touch the wrong thing, you could immediately then contaminate both your tools as well as the new mobile devices that we got. So we went out to San Diego to this conference back in 2017, and we met the RealWear folks, and we see them out here on the floor, and we were able to get about 30 to 35 of these HMT1 devices. And the device was hands-free. We were able to take it out into the field, and one of the biggest things that the operations guys, the feedback they gave me was that we love the fact that we don't have to touch this device. We don't have to put our hands on it. And so that's what we did. We had a similar roadmap to, I believe, Rodney and also Lorne, 3 to 5 year roadmap. What are we going to do? What type of applications are we going to leverage? What type of devices are we going to put on this expanded backbone? And that's kind of what we did. We started from there, and we continuously went down the road to look for different ways to use VR, AR, and some of these mobile devices. One of the AR use cases that we have right now is within the training department, being able to take the devices into the laboratory and also into the classroom, and then have someone also out in the field to show new hires and show students some of the activities that they may be a part of, where they're going through their on-the-job training, JIT training, OJT, TPE, or on-the-job training, and then their task performance evaluation, being able to show them in real time how to manipulate components. What does it look like when you're going to do a pump change-out? Where you're going to do a pump inspection? Some of these different things. So that's one of the biggest use cases from the outset with the HMT1 devices, the wireless headsets, taking them out in the field and then communicating back to the classroom to let the students kind of see what is actually happening in real time. That was the issue that we had, leveraging that wireless backbone and then figuring out ways to apply the new technology that was coming out. And I'm not a veteran in the game, but back in
Sorry, Ed.
But back in 2016, that's when it started. And to this point, I can also agree with Ed and what he said. The platforms have continuously gotten better. The technology has gotten better. And all we have to do now is verify that it's going to be safe. We're not putting anybody in a harmful condition or harmful situation. And then at the same time, making sure that from a knowledge retention standpoint, when we have some of the workforce that's retiring and leaving, that they're taking that knowledge, that proficiency, and some of that more experience that they have and sharing it with some of the younger ones. That's why we try to get some of those folks when they come in with their initial training and their initial onboarding into the company. So that's kind of the story. We went back, we had a need, we needed to leverage that infrastructure. And now that's what we're doing. We're using the HMT1 device right now.
Perfect, thank you. And we'll come back on some of those benefits thing, because I think there's some really interesting thing about training and skills kind of gaps and people leaving the company. So it's a theme we'll pick up a bit later. Rodney, would you like to go?
Yeah. So for Duke Energy, our group, we kind of went backwards in this journey. So in about 2015, we actually looked at the hardware first. So we wanted to understand how do smart glasses work, and what are all the components that we see in them. And so we started evaluating them and getting quite a few different pieces of hardware and evaluating them, and then understanding their capabilities. And then we went to a lot of our internal stakeholders to say, okay, we have these glasses and we understand that they can do this. How would they help your business, or could they help your business? And then we started developing use cases from our communications with our internal stakeholders. And then we started developing pilots. And so then the next phase that we went to is from those internal reviews that we did, and developing those use cases, we then went to looking at the different software vendors that could help us in bringing that together. And so then we developed our RFP with some of those folks. We developed our RFPs and then allowed them to bid. Like one special use case for us originally that we thought we needed to have is that your software application that brings all these devices together needs to be on-prem. So it couldn't be, we didn't want it cloud-based. We felt like originally our IT security folks wanted it to be done in-house. As we went through that process, we actually found out, or we actually learned from our IT person, that we actually can have this done as a cloud situation. So from that, then as we started doing pilots. We started doing pilots with a couple of those use cases as we got our software vendor in line, and then we've kind of been working through really the idea of internal adoption. So we see for us, again, the remote expert, or we call it See What I See. O&M procedure management, and then also the training aspect. So a lot of those similar use cases, but then again, that's kind of things that we started developing. Again, actually coming to this conference for a couple of years and seeing what other folks in this space have been doing as well.
And I have to say, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's an unusual use case or an unusual situation where you say, hey, we've got some hardware, what problems can we solve with it? So, and congratulations, you've been able to take them right the way through the journey, because that's a kind of tough gig sometimes. So.
Well, that's almost a special part about our group, Emerging Technologies, is that we look at the technology first. We think we know what it can do. We think we know how it works, but we don't know until we actually do it. And then we go into our either internal or external stakeholders and say, we have this. We think it can do this. We think it can help you in this way. What do you think? And this is, and again, this is augmenting this from in a 5 and 10 and 15 years. So there will be some in the Duke structure. They will have innovation teams that will look at incremental innovations for whatever they do. But we're really looking at revolutionizing the work or the way that. Even from batteries or solar, and that's another discussion. But we're looking at those things from really revolutionizing how we do our business.
That's amazing. Thank you for that insight.
My turn.
Yeah. You can take your coat off if you want.
No, not yet.
No, okay.
I'm still chilly. I liked what Lorne said. You were talking about kind of starting with a specific problem and trying to build a solution around it. And a colleague and I, we actually started a grassroots team at AEP that's focusing specifically on solid problem statements. And this kind of goes in line with that for our journey in augmented reality. But basically the challenge that we saw in transmission standards development really centered around communication. We have engineering groups, field groups, et cetera, that are spread out all over the footprint. And when we're trying to develop or revise a standard, we try to solicit feedback on said standard and generate, consensus and make sure it's a safe design and all those types of things. But there's very limited amount of feedback that you can get on a set of prints, particularly when it comes to folks that don't live in prints. They live in the physical world or inside of a substation. So we tried to meet them in that medium, thus the augmented reality solution, where we basically built a collaborative environment using Microsoft HoloLens that can be done locally and remotely and put all of our stakeholders into this standard environment together. And they, for all intents and purposes, do a virtual site visit on it, talk out the issues, let's get the model right, make sure it's safe, everybody's going to go home at the end of the day, make sure it's the most economical solution for a standard to be implemented across our footprint. And we've had quite a bit of success with it so far, and some of what we've discovered is like some of the things you'll notice in this type of review are things that would easily be missed when it comes on prints. You'd have to look at vendor drawings, steel details, so on and so forth to spot something that is just blatantly obvious when you look at it in a three-dimensional full-scale space.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So you can imagine when I was speaking to these guys on the phone, we had a whole bunch of different use cases, what we see, what you get, or remote assistance. We've got the collaboration, we've got training, and it's a real kind of wide range, but all of these people have, or you companies have deployed it, which is really exciting. So that takes me on to my second kind of block of questions, and then we'll open it up a little bit. And I'd like to start this question with show me the money. Show me the money. Can you talk a little bit about the ROI, the kind of the benefits you gain, both tangible and intangible? I know we've spoke on the phone kind of differences, and I kind of just want to open up. Someone feel free to start, and I think we just bounce it around between ourselves. Who wants to go?
I'll go if nobody else wants to go. So one of the biggest tangible benefits that we've been realizing is, I talked about that collaboration. If you send out multiple rolls of prints to multiple different states and multiple different stakeholders, inevitably what you get is feedback actually conflicts. And you create this cyclical sort of process where you're talking back and forth amongst the various different stakeholders trying to build consensus, versus if you do all that collaboration at once, talk through the issues, you've significantly reduced the amount of time it takes to develop a standard. So that's one of the biggest tangibles that we've seen. In terms of intangibles, I mentioned like the steel details and manufacturer prints and all that kind of thing. One of the issues that we discovered in one of our early model reviews was that an instrument transformer we had sitting on top of a piece of steel, and the bolt holes didn't line up from the bolt patterns, which is where you would be getting into all these different drawings to attempt to mitigate that particular issue. And long story short, those types of issues manifesting themselves are sort of forcing us to get better at what we were already doing, getting better at the modeling itself. So it makes you wonder, is it a model issue or is it an equipment issue? And talking through those types of issues.
Cool.
I'll jump in. One of the biggest things that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC, wants from a nuclear power perspective is to reduce dose, or the amount of radiation exposure that workers have on a daily, monthly, semi-annual, annual basis. Those things are tracked. And one of the teams that we have been working with extensively is our radiation protection team. And the radiation protection team, this is to speak to some of the tangible benefits. Normally when they're going out during an outage, so the plant gets shut down for a certain periodicity of time, 30 days or less, for maintenance and refueling activities, normally they're gonna go out and go do a typical work order. They're gonna go out and go do their jobs. Sometimes in a non-outage situation, they're gonna go out and go do a job as well. Well, in those situations, sometimes you have to go to what's called a locked high rad, or a high radiological control area, highly radioactive area. And in those times and instances, you're gonna have an individual who goes out to perform the job, and you're also gonna have someone who goes with him, who's going to him or her, who's going to check the dose, check the radiation that's in the area, make sure their stay time, or the amount of time that they can stay in that area prior to their dosimeter, or the device that's tracking it, goes off and they gotta get out. Prior to that happening, they're gonna have someone that tells them, all right, you only have a couple minutes left, we gotta get out of here. Well, with the devices that we now have out, the radiation protection team is now taking them out and recording all of their activities. During that recording, they are now able to do their peer check without having that second person or third person in some instances with them going out to their job. So what does that mean? Well, instead of all of us at this table, if we all go, all of us on the stage, if it's, six of us here. So instead of 6 of us going, 1 of us goes. Or instead of 3 of us going, 1 of us goes. Instead of 2 of us going, 1 of us goes. We don't all get that exposure. Only one person gets it in that instance, and they can complete that job and then go back and review the video to do the peer checks. One of the benefits that came from that is one peer check recently, about 3 weeks ago, indicated that in one of those locked high rad areas, there was an open door, a door that was supposed to stay closed on the condenser bay, I believe, up under the one of the areas. There was a fire door that was supposed to stay closed. Well, the video from the HMT-1 caught that and captured that, along with the dose reduction. And so that was something that the radiation protection team indicated that they would not have caught. Another benefit, it may be a little more on the intangible side, was some of the confined spaces that they had to go in. There were lights that had gone out in the area. Well, the flashlight on the device was able to be utilized to complete the job, whereas you got to that situation in the past, you have to pause the job, stop the job, go back, reassess the mapping or the way that you're going to go to that area to complete the job. I would say also some of the more intangible, fast data capture, so being able to capture data fast, and then fast data transfer, as opposed to taking pictures and photos and then coming back to the warehouse or coming back to a centralized location and downloading those off. We can now communicate that and capture and send that data all at one time. And so, I mean, they have really taken off with it. And I know you're going to talk about some of the benefits and challenges later, but they really love being able to go out and capture that data fast and not stopping jobs from taking place. In an outage scenario, you stop a job that may take you off of your critical path to get the units back online. But to reduce that time, it's been something that they really, really enjoy and really have benefited from a site perspective.
I'll go next. So we got some very good results, and I'll talk about the ones I'm most proud of first, and it's not money. We had our, due to putting our individuals through this training, we had a significant performance improvement during our outage by contractors. We had no tagging errors by contractors this past refuel. Typically in the past, we would have had 5 to 8 tagging errors made by contractors. So we know that they retained the knowledge from the training, and since we gave it to all the returnees, those are the individuals that get put in leading the crews. So they were keeping everybody out of trouble that way. That's in itself a savings because a root cause analysis in a nuclear power plant is along the cost of like $250,000 to go figure out why you did something wrong and how to correct it. So that's by itself is a significant savings. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations 2 weeks ago gave us a strength in training as a result of using technology in training, and they specifically mentioned the virtual reality training module that we did, and we got that notable performance improvement. So the use case, when I developed it, I had estimated about $80,000 savings per refuel, so that's every 18 months by changing this one training class to a virtual training classroom, and that was solely based on throughput improvement. So in the past, we had put about 20 students through in 8 hours. Some of the students were averaging 4 hours to get through the course. We got to just over 40. We were about 48 students in 8 hours through the course. So we met that. However, we didn't save the full $80,000 this time because we only put a third of the students through that training. So we've got a good plan going ahead where we'll train them before they ever come on site. We'll train them at the union halls because it's totally portable and I can do it in multiple locations, give the same training class to multiple people in multiple locations at the same time. So we're going to go that route to enable even more savings than what the original use case represented. So it's a really a good success story for my plant.
Thank you. Guys, keep going.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I'll take it from a different aspect because I know for a lot of our utilities, the safety aspect is really huge. But the one thing I'll also talk for us that was interesting to see is change management. So for introducing new technology, especially to different elements of our workforce, can present some different challenges. Depending for ourselves, which is for our utility, it's an older workforce. So now we're introducing new technology to them that is a little different than what they've ever used before. And in one of the pilots that we did, we were looking at warehouse picking and counting with our set of glasses. And one of the neat benefits that we saw, or just neat things that we saw, was that as the worker was going through, doing their job with our glasses, and with the technology that we had, they actually told one of their other workers just in the middle of the test and said, "Hey, look at what I'm doing. I'm using those smart glasses." And I'm like, "That's pretty interesting." And he actually put the glasses on the other person, gave them a few simple instructions on how to use it from what we told them how to do, and then that person was going on and picking and doing the job from there. And so that was one of those benefits that we wanted to capture, because especially as you explain this to stakeholders, that they're always going to ask, well, who's going to do this and are they going to like it? Because if your technology is not a success, even in the doing of the thing that you're trying to solve, but also just that adoption, customer adoption, as you would, that's also a huge important thing. And we saw that as a future ROI, because you're going to want your workforce to take on that new technology as you bring it to them.
And just to build on some of those, I mean, safety obviously is very critical for us. Being hands-free for all these devices is one of the fundamental benefits. But other ones is just getting the technology out there and finding out how your business uses it is super important, because when we did Remote Expert, we were thinking about, hey, we got these experts flying all over the world. We have one guy that's over 500,000 miles. It's like, how do we get rid of that problem? And so that was the one we focused on. But then one business unit was like, oh, we can use this for remote inspection. So we built a lot of our stuff in Korea, and they were able to basically now, every day they inspect. Before they'd fly a team of people out there. Now they're just able to do that inspection remotely, because you're basically putting, the person wearing the device doesn't really need a lot of skill from that perspective, from an inspection perspective. So that was super helpful. We do factory acceptance tests is another one. Before we'd send 4 or 5 people to the factory to do the inspection. Now 4 people sit in a conference room. The guy doing the factory acceptance test, there's one guy, he's wearing the device. He's there looking around. They do everything in 2 hours. So you save all that time as well. And then just lost production time in our business is significant. So anytime we can get equipment back up where we're having to call a vendor, and we've done this multiple times, that's a significant amount of savings. So those just in that one specific area.
Yeah, that's amazing, guys. I hope you agree. I think to summarize this, and I've been lucky enough to speak to lots and lots of companies around the world, one thing I think is really interesting is before you kind of start deploying is to measure how they do the process now. If you can capture that information, you can do the delta. You can show what it's like now and what it's like in the future. And that's a trick often missed, I think, because you're kind of keen to deploy. The other bit, and you mentioned a little bit, Boy, is kind of getting the champion. If you can start getting the users at that early stage with the technology, and they then teach the rest of their colleagues and things like that, that makes that deployment bit so much easier. I promised that I would let you guys all ask a question. So has anyone got a question? Please put your hand up. I'm going to jump down. Watch me try and get back up here in a minute.
Hi, my name is Joris. I'm an innovation manager at Vopak, an oil and gas petrochemical storage company. Thank you all for being so open about your experiences in the past with AR and VR. I have a specific question to add, as we are in the same industry, obviously. You were talking about the whole journey starting in 2015 until now, but you were talking about the HoloLens. Mm-hmm. And I've found in my work when I'm trying to get these AR and VR devices up and running, that testing with non-intrinsically safe devices is possible when you have permits and stuff, but actually deploying them in production proves to be a real challenge. Right. How did you do that in the past when intrinsically safe devices were not there yet?
So with the HoloLens initially, when it shipped, it was not intrinsically safe. And so what we did is we just used hot work permits, because there's lots of equipment that we have to take in. Now that creates time and effort and things like that. But that was the process we started with. What we then did is convince Microsoft to submit it for intrinsic safety testing, and the device as is was certified as C1D2. So even though we were not able to get the stamps put on them because they had already been manufactured, but we basically shared all the certification from UL with our safety groups, and they were like, yep, that's good enough. The next gens will all be certified, and so that'll be C1D2.
Okay,
yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, one more question before I ask these. Any? Oh, great.
Introduce yourself, please. Sure. Hi, Jennifer Rogers, Head of Learning Anglo-American. Question for you all. So I'm listening to you all talk about the amazing work that you all are doing. And I'm really conscious of one of the things that differentiates this type of technology is that AR and VR are consumed exclusively by people, right? So one of the questions that I have for you all is, how are you taking the data that you're getting from these experiences and actually looking at that, analyzing it, and furthermore, combining it into a people analytics strategy within your organization?
Okay, I'll go quickly. So one thing that we do is we go directly to some of the work groups on the site and get direct feedback from them. So we have feedback sessions. Another thing that I'm doing as well is collecting data from online data feedback forms like Microsoft Forms, using that and sending it out to my user group and my pilot teams at each of our sites. And those pilot teams are giving direct feedback, very transparent feedback, telling us what they dislike, what they like, and what they would like to see moving forward to see this pilot be more successful and to see the deployment be even more expansive as it goes. And so go directly to the users and the user groups and ask them, do they like it or do they not? If they like it, let's keep going. If they don't, let's see how we pivot and make it something better and more useful for them.
So having that champion and that SME on site is critical. In our business, you have to follow the systematic approach to training, make sure you include all that when you convert this. To go to the next level, though, when you take it to the field, I mean, my vision is you train them in the classroom, you use it for just-in-time training in the field just before you do the task, and you give them a platform that can do all that. And with the versatility that we have, we're doing exactly that. We're going ahead with a enterprise licensing situation agreement, and we'll have up to 9,000 licenses. Then I can track the data that you're talking about back to an individual performance of that task. We haven't flipped that switch yet, right? It's on the roadmap and it's a ways down, but that's where we want to get to.
Okay, thank you for a great question. We've literally got 4 minutes,
Yep.
okay? So now is getting tough, okay? So all of these people have successfully deployed AR. So number one, congratulations. Can you, and VR, sorry, I keep forgetting that. You've got number one key challenge you had to overcome. So literally just a kind of title in 1 or 2 sentences, each of you, that you had to overcome when you had to deploy these projects, remembering you're now live. Vincent, I'll go for you and come back again.
Okay. Ensuring that our roadmap for deployment of new technology is aligned and that there's synergy with our information technology or our IT department's roadmap, ensuring that there is an agreement between those 2 entities, because if you can go out and spend money on some new technology, but IT has not bought off on it or not in agreement with it, it can immediately get shut down.
Perfect. So engage with the IT team early. Fantastic.
For us, I would say one of our biggest challenges was the buy-in. Getting our leadership, both within IT and the business unit, to understand the benefits, and that it's not just a toy that's going to end up sitting on a shelf somewhere in 6 months or anything like that. It had to become part of our standards process to utilize this tool and seek the ROI.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
I'll talk about something besides the IT issues or your procurement issues, the standard stuff. Accounting was one of my challenges, because if you're buying a product that is you can't modify or make changes to yourself, then they won't allow us to capitalize that. So by having this platform, I'm able to make changes. I'm able to develop the material myself. Therefore, I can capitalize every module and the initial cost that I do down the road. And that was a big, big win to get that through, because accounting will otherwise tell you, well, if you can't make changes to it, it's just like purchasing a PowerPoint, and you cannot capitalize that.
I would say on our side, it was really, especially early on, is managing expectations. People thought this would do magical things, and we had to kind of control their expectations early on while the software was still immature.
Yeah, well, you took mine, but no, that's exactly it. So from IT, safety, but the biggest, I think the biggest thing I was going to say too is level setting. I was going to say level setting expectations. When you have smart technology, when you have some type of like new technology, there is this expectation that you're going to boil the ocean, and you have to really hunker down and explain that we're only going to do one small thing, and you're going to do it well, because if you don't do that one small thing well, then you pretty much you're done with the project. And so so that was the biggest thing for us. We're going to do one thing, and we're going to do it really, really well.
Fantastic, guys. And just from the work we do in the area, absolutely agree with all the things that you spoke about. You know, there's things like security that needs to be thought, and that's engaging with your IT team. We have a safety committee. Human factors, the actual UX, is something we've been looking at a lot and trying to develop some design guidelines and things like that. So, listen, I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure to meet you all, and I think there's some really insightful stuff here. We are the kind of experts in this industry, so please keep pushing, keep kind of deploying solutions, keep working hard at it. And thank you very much, and thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for all your insight.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.